September 2021 tarehe 24 mwezi wa 9 mwaka 2021. Natumai kwamba uko salama, umeamka vizuri na umeanza wiki yako umemaliza wiki yako fiti. Kama unakimbia ofisini, natumai kwamba tayari ushafika pale kazini ili kuweza kutafuta riziki ama kuweza kujenga nchi. Nimeona bwana kitu inaitwa pay as you want, Satan. Haya, karibuni sana za Sheria Wiki Hii Friday with Daktari EKURU. It's good to have him again. Alikuwa ameenda pale South Sudan kutengeneza serikali. Na tutaanza na hiyo kwanza. Ujinga ambayo iko Kenya hii. The brain drain that we have in this country. The best of the brains are never utilized. Serikali imejawa na watu wenda wazimu, wale watu ambao wako na akili, ambao wangefanya kazi basi. Naona wanahangaika huku nje, wanaheshimiwa pale nje South Sudan. EKURU atatuambia anatengeneza serikali vipi. Is an advisor to the UN. Imagine, legal advisor to the UN. Na tuko na AG ambaye ni Burukenge.
Chunga utafinyo bwana.
Tunapenda kesi tu. Shida ni serikali, every day the government is losing cases.
Yes.
So utasemaje wewe AG, utasema ni nini kama si haya? Sawa. Tuombe. Alafu tukirudi na kuja kwa hapa salamu zenu. My dear Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you, glorify your name. Thank you for another opportunity to be alive this week. We thank you for the opportunity to have this program. As we have this conversation, may we edify the fabric of this country. Well, thank you for every tackler was joined in this morning. May you meet them by the point of individual needs. For we pray, trusting and believing. Amen and amen. Aya, ali anga pia Nairobi. Hey, overnight, out of nowhere. Kutoka kwa jua
to baridi to now manyunyu. Climate change, my friend.
Ini nito climate change.
This is not climate change. That's not to take care of the environment. Otherwise, one day
niliona ulisikia minister wa environment. Tobiko alisema muache kutumia fridge ati ndio inaleta global warming. Is that true?
Serious?
Ama ni mimi ndio sikwenda shule.
I think ni vile tu ulisema kuna maburukenge wengi sana wako in charge of this country.
Ati muache kutumia fridge. Mbona cause kile to global warming.
So alitupatia alternative gani?
Mambo ni mengi.
Hata mzee Moi with all the problems associated can with kuna kitu moja anakuwa na insist sana. Panda miti, kata moja, panda mbili. Na you know, and really by now we could actually create forests in places like northern Kenya, dry and arid, semi-arid lands in this country, and that way we'll be addressing the of course the environment issue. You know.
And I was actually surprised. You see, I think we chose to suffer for a reason, because I was touring. I had a tour sometimes back last week of your area, all the way from Turkana. I going to Marsabit. I went to Chalbi Desert and came back. And you find places where people have decided to conserve the environment. It's very beautiful. You like in Turkana, you find a place you don't even think you're in Turkana. Exactly. Green, a lot of trees and all that. You go to Marsabit. Marsabit is like a city. It's like Nairobi. It's so green. So I think hii dunia tu ya Wakenya ni sisi wenyewe tunaamua kufinyana na kukula shida, lakini wacha ndarudi kwako, wacha nisalimie wangwana.
Tunaruhusu like you say maburukenge kututawala.
Uzuri uko hapa tukishikwa.
Kikatiba kuna kitu kinaitwa freedom of expression. Yes.
Na kuna kitu inaitwa anti what bill? Anticipatory pay. So tunaweza chukua kidogo tukingoja. Haya, Emmanuel Sarem, good morning to you my brother. Babake Willie, good morning live from KSA. Amungalita continue, good morning team tackle tuning in from Convent United Kingdom. Good to be part of this morning Sheria Wiki edition. Asante sana ndugu yangu Bowen Arab Bowen, good morning to you. Sir Paul Kibiego, good morning. Gerard watching from Nairobi. Gemaliel Babayao, morning watching from Karen. Asante sana Emmanuel Sarem. Ameamusha Chirchir Isaac Sarem, Julie Chirchir Isaac Sarem, Leonard Sarem, or the Masas Nyebene Nyeganet, Kipkurui Anthony, good morning. Ashalim Kibed Benachi na kuona Geoffrey Masha Kasaranu Yari na Santa Sana. David Kitu tuned in from Kapsabet. Cycling Masai, morning Taklas Narok is watching. Liki Nyanjua alisemaje jana. Haya, tutaingia hapo tujadili mambo ya minority group vile wananyanyaswa dunia hii ya Kenya. Galep Tadi, good morning team watching from Eldoret. Stephen Flames na Tomaga, tiga tunakupata sawa sawa. Asante sana Karoki wa Masi live from County 047. Noah K Kirwa, morning team. Morning team tackle Sheria Wiki Hii. Asante sana babake Willy. Good morning Bitok. Ask EKURU is he still believes in baba. Anachezwa bado. Huyu ni nabii alitabiri na kama kunaendelea kuumana tu. Haya, Shulim Kibet Benachi tuned in from out industrial area Butere. Asante Butere Road. Asante man Nathan. Anasema ngaleta Freddy hapa ngaeleza namna ya biashara legit. Haya, Freddy tutampigia simu. Uja tuambie mambo ya chemical ngamwaya. Asante sana. Dike ngamwaya chemical. Dike chebwai. Good morning Gerald Bitoka Aslas tuko ndani. Alan Kogo. Good morning Gerald. Dr. EKURU NDOLO tuned in Trendy Collections Bomet. Asante Alice Chage. Good morning to my sister all the way from Kitale. So good morning Gerald Bitoka tuned in from Kibagenge, Trans Nzoia County. Salimia sana watu wa Trans Nzoia County wa Kibagenge. Abedi Pop Kapombe tuned in from Lolongo Ketia Benji na umwambie anitafute. Haya, Benji wenu mwenyewe saa hii ni saa 2 simuoni. Kwa hivyo basi Benji mahali upo pokea salamu zako. Good morning Bitok watching from Kapsowar. Asante Cruz Choose. Good morning to my brother keep quiet Willy morning. Moriango Kenyanja Vincent, good to see you. Good morning tuned in from Doha Doha, God's blessings. Asante Jane Mumbi, good to see you. And some good morning good people. Good morning to you Jane Mumbi. Man Nathan present from here enjoying cup of cool coffee awaiting to gain something from my presidential candidate Daktari EKURU AUKOT. Asante Taylor Adriano Rosambe tuned in. Tony Bed good morning. Marion Eva Chela watu Kabana. Good morning GB. Andolo ongea mbaya utafinywa. Tuned in from the city Kabana. Tushafinywa hakuna mahali pa kufinya tena. Haya, Sabi Kemboy. Morning hakuna credit leo. Poleni it is Friday but Monday. Kuja Monday utapata credit. Senator Steve David Kipruto, good morning. Murkomen Wale et al. Should stop double speaking. They adopted 8% VAT. Kigen Kimgeno Rondal, good morning. Gerald Bito tuned in from Nairobi CBD. Brilliant Nick, good morning to you. Kevin Langan, morning. Gerald Wakini Mwenda Kadhali, CBD tukondane. Anzama kama kawaida bro. Asante sana. Basho Alasis Malu, my brother, good morning from Isli. Kevin Langan tuned in from Kabarak University. Patrick Waria, watching from Baghdad, Iraq. Allah, nako hatu wa Iraq. Haya, asanteni karibuni sana. Good to see you guys. Naona mheshimiwa Tapsago Gerald Kimeto ameamushwa. Mambo amuka. Irene Wanjiku, good to see you. You're the CEO wa Rex Roofing. Amesema welcome back. EKURU AUKOT. Daktari umekaribishwa. Alex Mayore, head director of communication. Good morning Tacklers. Great to join you guys. God is good. Asifiwe Yesu. Idari Chepkwaj Elo Wangwana watching from Sober Minds kabisa. Kesestara kwa word well represented. Aya, daktari, acha niende masokoni pale nilipe madeni kidogo. Alafu basi tukirudi tunakuja kuingia kazini. Tanzania Maridadi Motors inakupa nafasi ya kuweza kuagiza gari kwa bei nafuu zaidi. You can import directly with Maridadi Motors and you get it save up to 300,000 Kenyan shillings. Why should you do direct imports? Inafaa ulewe chain ya gari ikitoka pale kwa Mjapanese ambaye pia alinoka kwa Japanese mwenzake. Kitambo ikufikie Njoroge ameshika, kama ameshika, Uchenga ameshika. But when you import directly you get to cut all the links and you get to save your money up to 300,000 Kenyan shillings. If you also have money that you want to invest somewhere, Maridadi Motors gives you an opportunity to invest in the import to sell model where you invest your money and you get one up to 15% returns. Maridadi Motors Sacco as well gives you an opportunity to save for 2 reasons. If you want a unit you can save 50%. Alafu basi unaanza kuchukua gari yako, alafu unaanza kuendesha gari yako ukilipia balance nyingine. Maridadi Driving Academy also is a place where you learn how to be the best driver in town. Ama kuwa driver maridadi zaidi hapa kwenye city. Pia tujenge manyumba. You know, there's nothing as great, especially for a man, than building a home or owning a home. Hii mambo ya kugongewa kwanza COVID actually taught us that if there's something you cannot do without in Nairobi, it's a home. So if you are building a home today, it's not something that you do halfway. I mean, once you do it, you've done it. And I always say that your roof is your legacy. So Rex Roofing is a merchant or a seller of best roofing materials, quality shingles. Unaweza kuweka nyumba yako inakuwa shwari zaidi. Stone coated tiles pia unaweza pata pale, unaweka kwenye nyumba yako alafu paa yako inang'ara zaidi. Why shingles? Durable. 15 years. I cannot tell. I don't know where I will be myself in the next 50 years. I don't know where EKURU will be. I don't know where you will be as a person who is building today. But I can guarantee you that in the next 50 years, your roof will still be there. And I can tell you, kama utanunua shingles, uende weke kwa nyumba, alafu 50 years iishe, kama imeanza kuparara, nitafute mimi. Niko tayari kwenda kotini. I'll be almost 100 years. Lakini sawa, we'll pick it from there. So that is a Rex roofing quality roofing shingles, stone coated tiles. And also if you want to harvest water, you can get UPVC harvesting water harvesting gutters from them. I love if you're building, you want to do a flat roof. There's the need to do your waterproofing, right? So you get waterproofing membranes from Rex Roofing or waterproofing liquid as well from Rex Roofing. Rex Roofing gives you an all-round roofing solution. All-round roofing solution from Rex Roofing. Watu pia hii kabuti navanga hapa watu wa D-Square pale Eldoret. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much for always partnering with us. If you want to look as good as we look every day on the show, you can go and check out D-Square Wear in Eldoret, Ketia Building 4th floor, ama ukimbia pale kwenye Facebook watafute D-Square Wear. Alafu basi ukienda pale unaitisha discount, unapewa discount ya up to 20%.
Hata kashati tu hivi.
Unataka kashati? Kitenge.
Kitu safi.
Monday ndakuletea kitenge. Tanpea sizing Monday kitenge yako unapata. Haya, D-Square Wear from Eldoret, dress to be addressed. Nasema dress to be addressed. Unajua mtu ukikuwa na kwanza vile umetokeleza na vile umevaa. Kabla hujasema kitu, inaweza kuwa ni fala na baya mwisho. Lakini kama umeng'ara umefunga suti tie na unyamaze kama nyani.
Nawaambia hata wa initial
watakuheshimu sana. Yes, weke hiyo coat hapa ndani, unaona ile lebo ndani weke hiyo coat. Daktari, hiyo coat. Presidential. Tuanze na hapo kwanza. Hadi sasa ulikuwa unakaranga serikali pale South Sudan.
No, ni walinialika kupitia international UN
UNDP.
Nimecharge kanywaji safi kabisa.
Unasikiaje?
Maridadi. In fact hata wache nilainishe call. Ndio tuongee vizuri na watu.
A day without recharging is a wasted. Inaitwa recharge dawa by Peptan. Unasikia asali, unasikia lemon, unasikia ginger mpaka COVID. Kila kitu. Hii ni dawa kabisa.
COVID ikisikia inatoroka.
Hii ndio tutengeneza juu yake.
So I've been in South Sudan and I'm very happy to be back in Bitok. I'm trying to do a roadmap for South Sudan constitution making process. We just completed the constitution making process bill 2021 and it's now being discussed. So I'm going back again kwa chorea kuna kazi jamaliza. So nitaenda lakini nitarudi tupambane na hiyo watu for 2022. Sababu tumeona mauongo mingi sana wanaambia wa Kenya sijui watafanya sijui miujiza gani sijui if they get into government. But you know Bitok, we'll come to that what I'm doing in South Sudan. I like promoting Kenyan businesses.
But even before you go there, the brain drain in this country, brains are like yours. I mean,
you know, I don't know.
Why is it that Kenya never appreciates?
You know, you're a bishop. And I'm sure
nimejaribu kuambia nje was.
And I'm sure there are many Kenyans in the diaspora. Wanatusikiza. Hata Benji NDOLO hapa anaweza kukuambia historia yake alipokuwa huko America nini.
Sikale pandisho ndege sio kama ni ukweli.
The way the rest of the world appreciates talent and knowledge that exists in this country. You know, they say that Kenya is one of the most educated countries in sub-Saharan Africa. But yet, what is our education and our knowledge, our know-how of society problems is not reflecting on how we govern ourselves. Okay? And I think it now brings a lot of doubt as to whether even we Kenyans, do we actually make the right choice? What is the point of investing so much in education, in knowledge, harvesting knowledge, yet we don't want to use that knowledge, for example, to address ourselves? I am very happy to help our friends in South Sudan with the constitution-making process. I mean, basically, maybe they appreciate, because South Sudanese are very categorical. They say that if they want advisors on the constitution-making process, they want to pursue the approach that was taken by Kenya, because you know our constitution, the last constitution that we wrote for this country by the committee of experts, is very developmental in its very character and nature, and the idea really is to try and transform society for better. The unfortunate thing, like you said, we have allowed Maburukenge to be the ones trying to implement it or to disrespect it. But if it was implemented, even to the spirit alone, even if the letter of the law is not very clear, alone, this country would really change drastically. Because if you look at, for example, just devolution alone, and I can now speak as a nomadic pastor from Turkana and from the NFD, and I'm sure I'm speaking for millions of other marginalized people. When devolution, with the devolution and with the history of Kenya, right from independence, from the two regimes of Kenyatta and then Moi at some point, people used to talk a lot about marginalization, being segregated, being, kicked to the periphery of this country, not being part of the center. But with with the devolution, we said, you know what, let's take resources to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. And maybe just because we always take opportunity to remind Kenyans where is this in the Constitution, just to tell them that you need to look at Article 6 of the Constitution. I think it's about Article 3 that says that all national organs must devolve their services and resources to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. It was an attempt to bring equality, and therefore that even with the Turkana today, with the resources that come to us, probably now close to like 100 billion, we should be able to account for that in terms of development. You can say the same thing of Marsabit. You went on a tour of Marsabit, Samburu the other day, you know, Mandera, Wajir, and all other so-called marginalized communities. So there was really no point now to say we are marginalized. It's about how do we use our resources in this country. That also, of course, calls for, you know, intellectual resources. Many Kenyans out there are really doing fantastic things. I had the opportunity one time to meet the guy, actually, a Kenyan engineer, who designed the London, you know, the underground in London. And he brought that idea here in Nairobi because we still have space, we still have the opportunity, we are still growing. But imagine, they didn't listen to him. If you look at the guy who actually invented M-Pesa, M-Pesa today is global talk. It's not just Kenyan talk. It's actually revolutionized. And this is why we even approached IBC, for example, to tell IBC, if Kenyans can actually transact money through their phone. Pesa. Kwani ni kura ni kitu gani? Na kura tunapiga only once every 5 years. Only once.
Inafaa tutume kura kama
technology, then we reduce the cost of running elections in this country. No. That's all brains that we have in this country. Serious talent, you know? But we don't utilize it. So for me, as a Pan-Africanist, if South Sudan appreciates my services as a lawyer, I am more than happy to help them.
Before we go to South Sudan, and I'm very sorry I'm late. Allow me, Gerald, if I can ask him a question. Do you talk with Nanok, Governor Nanok from your county?
No, I don't talk to him.
I think that says a lot. Because he's a constitutional expert that dreamed of devolution, that did a lot of work. The fact that he does not even speak with his own governor, and the governor doesn't see it fit to tap into his intellectual resource, tells you everything you need to know about what is wrong with our country. My apologies, nimekuja late. You know, I got lost around here. It's my first time.
Why are you getting lost? Only just arrived from America.
No, I'm very bad with reading pins.
Benji, to your question, you raise a very fundamental question.
It's a fundamental thing.
Why aren't our governors, for example, talking to people who are in the know? The reason is simple. Because if we go back to how we choose our leaders, we choose the worst to be our leaders. And when the worst get into power, we who are in the know become their enemies immediately. And you can
because you're a threat.
Yeah, you can ask this of almost all counties in Kenya, by the way. First of all, they begin by not appointing the right guys as their CECs.
Correct.
Because the moment you appoint a guy who is knowledgeable, who knows his stuff, you know, and if you look at the philosophy behind our constitution, especially in terms of the choice of government, the idea was bring in expertise, remove politics from service delivery.
And bring technocrats.
You know? But look around, even from our own government, national government, go to the counties. So they want to pick sycophants. So now, because I will never be a sycophant to begin with, or anybody else a sycophant. I will tell them, listen, you know, you do your work, but let's do it the right way. Correct. So they will not. Even for you, Benji, you could easily be tapped even by any of these, county governments or even the national government, but they wouldn't want.
Yeah, they don't want independent minds.
Even our own national government will not want to exploit the loss of brain that exists in the diaspora. And you know, there are many of them who can actually revolutionize this country.
Absolutely.
And I speak to, I'm sure you also speak to friends in the diaspora. They get frustrated. I know many of them who wants to come back home. But then people wonder, now, why are we not fixing our problems in Kenya? You know? So that's really where the problem is. And of course, these people avoid us. Even when you give advice, they think you want their seat. To be honest with you, I'm more than happy to go back to the classroom and teach law and, you know, advise and let other people run government. But you see, we can no longer sit on the fence. Because if we don't do something, my friend, even in our own lifetime, we may just inherit some shithole for a country.
Benji, good to see you.
Good to see you, my brother. Good morning. Poleni sana. Remind me to come back to Dr. AUKOT's issue on devolution for the simple fact that agriculture was devolved. I was going to say decentralized, devolved. So that involves, for example, extension officers to the ground. It involves paying whatever government subsidies to farmers and what have you. To the best of my knowledge, that is not happening. Therefore, we cannot be food secure. So now we resort to flagging donor grain, flagging international, food agriculture organization, subsidy food, supplementary, initiatives, when we have what you call failed rains. Again, this is patchwork, elastoplast, reactive kind of governance that can never move the country forward. So once again, in the spirit of devolution, it's on the national government and His Excellency the President's role to not just be reactive, to not superintend over theft of national resources, but to provide leadership and to set a clear agenda and say, for example, number one, that devolution must not just work, but be seen and felt to work. So that simple things on the ground, like extension officers coming to look at crop, like crop dusting using the small Cessna planes, just to ensure that you spray the birds and the locusts and whatnot so that they don't eat wheat in Narok, so that they don't destroy maize crop, so that we have a way to harvest and store maize and translate that not only into food but also profit for farmers. These are all very basic things, Daktari, and these things are not happening. In fact, one of the best examples, I was on a TV show last night, and I was surprised in the discussion to find out that Kenya has not only an energy minister, but also a petroleum minister. What is the work of Munyes? What is the work of Munyes is a joyrider. So Kenyans are paying 135.
Have you forgotten that we had a minister without portfolio? A CS without portfolio.
So once again, this is not the way to run anything. In a country that is debt laden, that is running in its national budget a fiscal hole, deficit. This is not the way to run a government, and it doesn't make me the enemy of President Uhuru to say that. I consider him a friend and a brother, and my job therefore is to say what he should do, in the most progressive, inclusive, modern fashion for accountability and for fiscal health of this country. It's not for us to continue borrowing and looting the resources so that we have ballooning debt in 9 years and really no way to pay it, rather than increasing taxation, which then hampers the economy, and a hampered economy cannot create jobs. So again, I don't know who needs to hear this, but as the president is now within the last year of his term, and some of us really pushed against misguided things like BBI, president needs to not focus on rubbish. It's the blueprint is very simple. First, just read and embrace the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And then if you implement the Constitution, or if you let the Constitution be your guiding beacon, Gerald, you can never go wrong. You can never go wrong. I mean, you had so much by way of, if you look at the expenditure for BBI, under what budget item was that money being spent?
It's not accounted for.
It's you can't. You can't run things in such a fashion where you cannot tell me what the line item for the budget is. You can't run a country like a kiosk. You don't even run a kiosk that way. And then you are doing things.
It is quacking and walking like a kiosk.
And you're running things contrary to the Constitution. Just by whims, and saying, therefore, trying to entrench tribalism in this country by saying we have 5 top big tribes. Where does his tribe, which I'm not even sure what tribe Turkana is, where does that tribe?
It is Turkana.
I thought Turkana is a place. as opposed to Kamba, which has Machakos.
Sasa waliniambia ukifika Kenya salimiana.
Exactly.
They don't believe they're in Kenya.
Exactly.
Sasa tunataka kusema mafuta ni yetu. Tunauzia nyinyi wa Kenya.
Unakuwa president wa Turkana.
So now, when do we say that the Turkana also get a seat at the table of president, deputy president, prime minister, deputy prime ministers? This is all hogwash. What Kenyans need to do is look for leaders, champion governors, champion leaders in the national government that will work hand in hand with county governments, disburse money as required, implement policy to the root, to the bottom, so that we can alleviate poverty. As it is now, with increased taxation, with increased cost of living, all we're doing is deepening poverty while increasing debt and wealth at the top. It's not sustainable.
It's ridiculous. Let's take it back to you, Ekuru, on the state of the
on
nation.
that point of state of the nation,
Yeah,
I
I
can
think
start with
you
that.
had something, yeah.
Because to be honest with you, I don't know whether to say I am sad as a Kenyan, angry,
Or outraged, yeah.
outraged, depressed, aggrieved, annoyed. I mean, I don't know what adjective I can use to just describe the state of the nation in Kenya. Let me contextualize this, why I'm saying I don't know whether to be depressed or not. Even from what just Benji has said, the misuse of our resources, the duplication of roles in government, the failure by our leaders to just optimally use our resources to make the lives of Kenyans better. It is depressing. But let me tell you a story. Kenyans, I don't know whether Kenyans know that there are 20,000 Bolt or Uber drivers in this city.
20,000.
20,000 in Kenya. About 20,000. Now, on average, a Bolt driver will probably sell, say he'll make, say 3,000.
A day.
A day. 3,000 a day. If he runs, I mean, if he's lucky, maybe he's dropped somebody in Karen, I don't know, Lavington, airport, whatever. Give and take. That's what they said. The minimum they can make is 3,000. From that 3,000, the Bolt owners, the people who own the application, take home 750. Take 750. If you multiply 750 by 20,000, that is 15 million every day. That is the money. That the owners of Bolt take home. 15 million. Now, the Kenyan driver is left with 2,250. If he does not own the car,
he has to
the
pay
owner
down of the
must take away 1,500.
Wow.
Then
Okay.
fuel.
Yeah?
Then fuel.
No, we've not yet reached there. So he's remaining with what? 750. Now, this 750 is expected to fuel the car, take care of wear and tear,
And insure it.
airtime,
Yeah.
insurance, and feed his family.
Yes.
This is oppression.
It is.
And this oppression and this slavery and this servitude actually goes against the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, that you cannot hold people in servitude and slavery. It's against, it's one of those protected fundamental rights in Chapter 4. And I think we all need to read Chapter 4 now. Now, why is this oppression going on in Kenya? It's going on in Kenya because our own government is aware of this problem.
Correct.
Whenever these Uber drivers or Bolt drivers actually, picket and go on riot, which is really constitutional, which is by they guaranteed under Article 37 of
They
our
tear gas
Constitution.
them.
They tear gas them. You know what they are told? Find another job. Because why? The
oppression.
people who are supposed to be sponsors of Bolt and Uber in Kenya are sons and I'm told daughters of the who is who in government in Kenya.
We know who you are.
Aristocrat.
Yeah? Okay?
Exactly.
I remember representing Uber drivers in 2016 or 2017 thereabouts, and I was summoned in Parliament by then commander-led committee on transport.
Yeah.
And I told him, point blank, Ekuru, wachana na hii story. Unataka kuharibia watu kura. I was told that to my face in Parliament, in the precincts of Parliament. These Bolt drivers have told me they have approached their representatives, even here in Nairobi. They have all bolted away. They have left them on their own. And you know what? The guy who is making 15 million from the sweat of an ordinary Kenyan here is pocketing 15 million without even paying a single tax. Without paying a single tax. This Uber driver who takes home 750, the moment he buys fuel, he's taxed.
Exactly.
He sends money to his
Airtime,
relative, he's
taxed.
taxed. He buys airtime, he's taxed. This country is depressing. I think this country is ripe for a total revolution of sorts.
Let me make his point further. I love doing something called comparative studies. I was in London 2 years ago. And I left for my Nairobi flight very early in the morning. And I had occasion, of course, to have the conversation with the cab driver who took me from Easton to Heathrow. So we had a good discussion, and he said, you know, he's an Indian guy. He told me about life in London, they work hard, etc. And it's very interesting, EKURU talks about these numbers, because when we had the discussion, the guy told me that, you know, today I've picked you early. I've taken you to the airport. So by 9 o'clock this morning, I will have made 10,000 shillings.
Wow. 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, by 9 o'clock in the morning. When you convert from sterling pounds to Kenya shillings, it's a very easy, yeah, because we talked politics, we talked, he's an immigrant. He said, yeah, by 9 o'clock, 10, I'll have made more than $100. That's 10,000 shillings. And potentially then he would work until 7, 8 o'clock at night. It explains why they've bought houses. There's a lot of prosperity because the rates, the market, I actually saw a news report yesterday, Daktari. Given COVID and all the demands, etc., there's a shortfall of truck drivers in the UK. This is actually on international news just as of yesterday. A lot of the jobs have been taken by immigrants. The jobs pay something like 75,000 shillings a week. For a lot of Kenyans who are not as educated and as exposed as you and I, this is money they've never even dreamed of. And so that's why Daktari says that Kenya is oppressive. It's not that we had a meeting before we came to this radio station. We actually have a lot of our own political differences and what have you. But what he's saying is very true, that we are in an unequal society because we lack an enabling environment, because government policy is oppressive, is exploitative, and that in itself, Gerald, increases poverty. It cascades and assures poverty that if you don't know someone, you know, there are no opportunities. You cannot get a job. You cannot get an appointment. You cannot, many times if you do business with different governments, national or county, you cannot get paid because you don't have a connection, you know, you don't have a godfather. Again, very unsustainable, very undesirable. It's oppression, and it's skewing the cake towards the who's and not who's against the actual voter.
And I think let's just be brutally honest, be talking like we always do in this show. I think Kenyan government just hates Kenyans, or whoever is in government, by design, because it's individuals. I mean, if you go back to the example Benji gave earlier of why do we have two ministers on a relatively same docket, petroleum and energy, okay? Because Kenyan government over the years or decades serves individuals, not Kenyans. Okay? It's a service to individuals and not Kenyans. That's why we have a government that's actually competing with Kenyans in business. You know? For example, on this issue of Uber, I mean, listen, this is a good business opportunity for the ordinary Kenyan. For the fact that the government has never even been able to create jobs and employment, especially this particular one when it's been lying to Kenyans that every year will create 3 million jobs. So, Uber, yes, and Bolt is welcome to Kenya, but not to exploit Kenyans' labor. Because this is depressive. Is this driver now who takes home 750 a day after toiling until, and that's why you see guys sleep in the cars at night. True. Now even with the Uber restrictions, you know, curfews and all that. I mean, I would love to support because that's why this morning I decided let me take a Bolt. You know, I don't want to drive. You see, with this kind of oppression, you know, it is, for me, it's depressing actually, that how can we have a government, big shots in government, who are actually the sponsors of oppression of our own people? When will we build our people? When will we, you know, by the way, Benji, it's good you bring the example of drivers in the UK and elsewhere. One of the things that you, maybe that guy did not tell you, after he makes a certain threshold, say 10,000 Kenya shillings, he can actually opt to attend college in the afternoon.
Exactly.
And educate himself.
Lakini Kenya utafanya 24 hours.
24 hours. You cannot even improve yourself. And that's why those guys, if you look at the Kileleshwas, the Kilimani, just look at the names of some of those apartment blocks. They're actually names borrowed from, say, England. A lot of them. Why? Do you know the kind of work those guys do? They're watchmen, drivers, or
Plumbers.
plumbers,
especially
and all that.
plumbers.
Plumbers. Plumbing is one of the most lucrative jobs.
Yeah, I know a plumber in Boston who makes over $100,000 a year, and he's a young guy. In fact, he used to make that years ago. I mean, it's totally.
And they even have an association. If you look at the Plumbers Association of England and Wales, just Google it. Serious. To get a plumber, they charge per hour. That's because there's an enabling.
There's dignity.
There's dignity. They
Look at Atwoli here. Look at Atwoli.
He has a road.
Because his role is to champion workers' rights, fairness and equality, workers' conditions. Under what conditions are you working? Are you handling things like asbestos that are poisonous, lead poisoning, and look at what Atwoli does on a daily basis in his home, in his public appearances, in everything. He is a political sycophant and champion of a person. Forgetting the millions of workers. He's almost a socialite of a person. And Mzee. So it is really depressing to look at the situation that Kenyans find themselves in, while they are also not innocent, because Daktari, it is Kenyans themselves also who pick these oppressive leaders. And so it's a very toxic relationship, and one that many times ends very badly, and sometimes also ends in chaos and violence and what have you. You just wonder what should be the way forward.
Right. And talk about oppression and depression in this country. The OKX, who are the minority, have lost their only person in government. Moja. Prengei. Now Prengei passed away. He's
senator.
Now he's been replaced by a guy from Nyandarua.
Remorseful. They know this guy just died from an accident. Instead of even saying to this community, poleni, wacha tuwapatie another replacement, at least
they put a Kikuyu.
They put a Kikuyu. I mean, this is not to hate Kikuyus. Kikuyus are my in-laws, and we have many friends. But is this really fair? Terrible. And you can now imagine what they will get community, because the truth for the matter is, even if you look at, for example, the politics towards 2022, it is ingrained in the minds of Kenyans that mtu wetu lazima kwe president. Mtu wetu. So that idea of government is representation, represents only a community, because of course our politics is still tribal, and of course it's stupidly tribal, to be honest. Stupidly tribal. You think that because if EKURU AUKOT now became Kenya president, ati Waturukana watu watakuwa napanga line hapo State House, school fees, whatever. It's rubbish. But the reality of Kenyan politics is also that I don't know what dissatisfaction people get when one of their own represent them. But it's because of the failure of government over the years to serve all Kenyans in equal measure. It is what gives people this false satisfaction that if, for example, today one of our own is appointed a governor, there is some level of satisfaction, and I relax and I say, at least it's not still the right thing. But it is so bad for Prengei to be replaced by a Kikuyu. I don't know this guy who represents him. But it really sends very bad, bad signal. And this is why people, now harden themselves when it comes to political decisions. Because government has refused to play like a father figure, or the top leadership has refused to play father figure role in the entire country. And look at all Kenyans like my children as my home, and I want to treat all of them in equal measure. This is what is causing division in this country, causing conflict, causing hatred. Unfortunately, the common mwananchi starts hating member of another tribe when actually it is manipulation from the top leadership. And going back to the question of leadership, talk, yes, we make mistakes as Kenyans, as electorate. We select maburukenge, watu hivi. But we should also now begin to question the leadership in any country has an obligation, has a fiduciary duty to lead the people, to lead society to prosperity. That they cannot run away from. It is their responsibility to do that. It's also their responsibility to chaperone people to a certain direction, okay? And to tell society this is how we must behave ourselves. I mean, going back, for example, to even this question of Uber and Bolt drivers, it is our own government that must be able to say, no, according to the labor laws in this country, according to the Constitution of Kenya, the treatment of Uber drivers, Bolt drivers is not fair. It goes against labor practices, fair labor practices, and all that. It is the leadership that must encourage our people to create wealth through their sweat, their hard work. But leadership is not doing that because first, it doesn't care about the law. It doesn't care about, and so, again, we go back. I hope maybe we should rebrand this show today and just say the oppressed, depressed Kenyans.
The best depressed panel.
But we must not give up.
Benji.
Yeah, well, you cannot.
I've also seen, Lee Kinyanjui, Governor Nakuru County, has come out, guns blazing, and he has directed all the Jubilee. And I mean, everyone is finding it so ridiculous. I don't know what your feeling is. In a country that's struggling with inequality.
He's directed what to Jubilee?
Salvos, he sent a letter yesterday, a messaging yesterday to Jubilee Party.
Saying what?
Protesting the replacement of Prengei with a guy from Nyandarua.
Well, Jubilee Party, as you know, and I like to choose my words carefully because I can say a lot. Jubilee in so many ways has been a disaster. From the
Benji,
beginning.
welcome to the taco. Here in the taco,
we tackle. That's why it's a tackle.
Let's go call the taco.
It is a tackle.
Tackle this issue.
Hapa tupige kupiga.
Hapa kunanga mzama.
Jubilee, Jubilee from the beginning, they just lacked a seriousness of purpose, a sense of purpose. I think that beyond just escaping the international issues of the time, to dodge that court over there, Jubilee's misperformance is clear as broad daylight. And so what has happened progressively is, a sinking further into the abyss. Jubilee is at war with itself. Jubilee is run in such a shambolic manner. I mean, you just need to look at the pronouncements of both Murathe and Tuju to wonder. I mean, it is really no wonder that blunders and all manner of craziness are part of Jubilee, because who is really Jubilee? Who is running Jubilee? Who is manning Jubilee? Who is... Raila is advising Jubilee. I think he's
the
in
first
Jubilee.
time government brings opposition.
Yes.
So they claimed opposition into.
And by so doing, by usurping opposition...
And kicking his own deputy president.
Exactly. You then destroy democracy. I mean, for the short-term gain, you give the president leeway and comfort and space to know that nothing can come against him. But in a sense, then you dismantle democracy. And one of the things the fourth president, Mwai Kibaki, did famously was, President Kibaki is a very tolerant man. And he's a macro thinker, a macroeconomist and a big-minded, operator. So what the president did is, in a sense, entrench democracy by saying, if you have something against him, basi pewa kiwanja pale, and mobilize your support against him and have the freedom to say whatever you like against the head of state, without worrying that you will be killed, that you'll be picked up, that you'll be tortured. And so, in a sense, allowing parliamentary democracy, representative democracy to take root in the country, where you can actually go to parliament as opposition, and even to court or anywhere else, and be heard. What President Uhuru has done is emasculate the voice of parliament, of civil society. I think you remember one of the first bills EKURU tried to do as devolution CS, sometimes in 2014, when the government was just about a year old, was to try to do a bill to understand civil society and to emasculate civil society, to look at where does civil society get its donor partners from. Their donor partners, therefore, allegedly have an agenda to, overthrow the... all that is not helpful. That kind of intolerance, that kind of insecurity, from an executive or from a head of state cannot be good for democracy. And so, to see Jubilee, having all this infighting and what have you...
It's not a surprise.
It's not a surprise at all, and it's not something that I can express shock, Lee Kinyanjui is just expressing frustration, as many, many, many other Jubilee adherents. And it's really sad because they really came out strongly and to the man.
Komea.
In fact, they always tell me, because I talk to a lot of folks on the street, and they say, we came out to save our son. And now we wonder, why are they punishing us?
Yanatukaranga zaidi.
Anatukaranga, cost of doing business is impossible. We're importing fish from China. We have destroyed all industries, sugar, coffee, milk, tea, etc. I mean, I can go on and on. Why this? And curiously, the president's very quiet on a lot of the things that matter. He's tried.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's tried. They've done some coffee, task force reforms. They've tried half-heartedly. They've made a bit of progress on that. But President Uhuru, as a young guy, he could have achieved 10 times more what he's achieved now, and with a lot of fiscal discipline, with a lot of accountability. You remember the attacks against the Auditor General just for saying money is being stolen.
Judiciary.
Yeah, the attacks, the personal attacks against the person of the Honorable the Chief Justice David Maraga. Oh, this is not the way to go.
Okay, now there's a question for you, gentlemen. From Hal.
Before we go to that question, I just want to maybe remind listeners, and Benji also was not here that time. Benji, the way I see the failures of Jubilee, we all agree that Jubilee is a failed regime, failed government. Ni mzigo kubwa sana kwa Wakenya, which I wish we had punguzed in 2017 instead of re-electing them. But because they went into slumberland, they don't know how to govern, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
They don't know how to govern. So one of their geniuses, I think, in Jubilee is that since we are in slumberland forever and we don't want to serve Kenyans, we have ticked the box that I'm president and all that.
Yeah.
So there was only one noisemaker out there who had somehow the inroads into government, having been a prime minister, having been in politics. Raila. Yeah. So to go back into slumland, to continue to sleep and not serve Kenyans. Yeah. So we bring him.
Let's capture him.
Let's capture him. So there is betrayal both ways. Betrayal also from Raila, who claims to have been for a long time he has claimed to be the doyen of opposition.
Yeah.
Something that he tries to inherit from his father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga.
Yes.
And for accepting himself to be compromised,
yes, of course,
into government, because that's a compromise.
Yes.
Actually, it's like bribery.
Yes.
Raila was told, for you to
hand check,
stop making noise. Serikali. On the other hand, Jubilee is saying, for us to continue sleeping and not enforcing the law, the rights of the people of Kenya, governing them well, we bring the only guy who will have been our troublemaker out there, and then we can continue going resting, and now continue borrowing heavily. It is estimated that by the time Jubilee administration ends next year, and I wish it could even end this year, we will have 9 trillion in national debt. 9 trillion.
Unthinkable. Which was 1.2 trillion.
By the time Kibaki.
Exactly. Which was 1.2 trillion.
Bitok, Benji, watoto wenu pia wanakona deni.
Of course.
Saizi kabla hujapachika mtu mimba, my friend.
Fikiria kwanza.
Sababu ni deni.
You know, Daktari, in 2009, I was very active when you were just going to do constitution writing. So I was very active with Omtata, doing a lot of what we were doing, in the streets, public interest litigation, demonstrating against this and that, under the then National Civil Society Congress of Maurice Odhiambo. And I remember that time, we were talking of every newborn child in this country and every Kenyan owing 30,000 shillings.
Now it's over 100,000.
Now it's over 100,000. That, and it's just the other day, 2009, per person. The least we can do, and at great risk sometimes, is to stand up and to speak out. We at least must say that this is not right, and let the record show that Benji said it, that Dr. AUKOT said it, that we can mobilize against it, that we can do campaigns and manifestos and whatnot around principles. One of the saddest things, Daktari, and again, I was on a show last night where I had occasion, because I was the only non-elected member of parliament on the show last night. I sat with Sosion, I sat with Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi of Nambale, smart guy, former budget committee gentleman. I had occasion to think that even as things go this badly, even senior leaders like Honorable Kalonzo, a whole vice president, a whole former foreign affairs minister, these guys cannot even have the temerity to go to Uhuru, who is their younger brother,
Tell him.
ndugu yako mdogo, to just say, Your Excellency, ai bwana hapa tunaenda aje ndugu yangu. Hey.
And they have a lot of
And
experience.
that's his younger brother.
And they have a lot of experience, having been in the Moi government.
That's what I'm saying. Do you know, by the time President Uhuru came to join politics, someone like Kalonzo had been in cabinet for like 10 years.
Yes.
I mean, these are senior politicians. And as things go badly, they are so quiet, they leave it to me and him, and Boniface Mwangi, surely somebody who just did Form 4 the other day, to carry the whole burden of this country.
Yeah. But Benji, you know why? Because they are part of the oppressors. Because
that's the thing.
Why wouldn't, for example, a senior politician say like Alonso or Raila or whoever tell Uhuru Kenyatta, Mr. President, you're going wrong. We've been in government before you.
Exactly.
We've played politics before. We've been elected so many times.
Exactly.
We think this is not the way to take the country.
To take the country.
We'll even remind him, hey, you are educated abroad in America.
Imagine.
All these places.
Imagine.
You know the finer things of what happens in other countries. You have traveled.
Exactly. You're exposed.
You are exposed. This is not how to govern Kenya. But they wouldn't, because they are part of Mafisi in government.
Mafisi.
Yeah, we tackle.
Bring that question. There's a
This is
question.
a tackle. Now, there's a question from Afani, yeah? And he's asking, let me see. He's asking my question to my friend, and this comes from the other day. The government said that he's going to be getting some money from the nurses who are going to the UK, and he's asking my question to my friend, AUKOT, what is your take regarding government championing brain drain and also taking part as a recruiting agency?
Of course, it's pathetic. It's annoying. Be talk. In this country, first of all, we should be having our best to actually govern us or leaders and serve us. But we should also be a country that actually now, exports labor, because we have invested heavily in education. Let me tell you. Let's be very clear here. If you look at all the episodes of Kenyan governance, let's just pick, say, Kenyatta. I mean, we pick, Kenyatta, we can say, what can we remember Kenyatta for? Maybe the idea of independence, independent Kenya. Generally speaking, there are many, many specifics you can remember him for. But if you deconstruct some of the problems, all those kind of things, you can say, mambo ya wizi wa mashamba ilianza 1965 and all those other things. But you can say, the Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta, Uhuru. We come to Moi. Moi, somehow you can remember Moi, even despite the torture chambers, education. Yeah. Education. He built so many schools. You can actually say, mzee alipenda sana education. He really invested in human development. Because you see, education is actually a human development, issue. Kuja Kibaki. Kibaki unasema uchumi. And there are some good things that you can, with Kibaki. Hata ukidrive on Thika super highway, unakumbuka tu. Ni Kibaki.
Tunalala kidogo.
CDF Kibaki. Uchumi kidogo Kibaki. Kuja kwa Uhuru.
At the proper cost.
Yes. Kuja kwa Uhuru. What do we remember Uhuru for?
Denny. They say Denny.
Yeah?
Yeah.
A lot of negatives. Yeah. Nothing new. Violation of our constitution. Yeah. Disrespect for the judiciary. All those things. National debt. And
that's a big mistake.
Yeah. And right now, and I'm telling you this, and I can also speak now about Kenya tried to export human labor, for example, to the Middle East. Domestic workers in Kenya are tortured. Today, as we speak, there is a lady in Saudi Arabia who is being held hostage. I just got information about her yesterday. And just in the interest of our own safety, we cannot mention her name. But this is just one of thousands and thousands of Kenya. What is our government doing about that? Because these people are not going to the Middle East by choice. It's because of the deplorable situation back home.
70% unemployment.
Exactly. So they have to go and feed their families. But when they go there, they actually become slaves. They are enslaved. First of all, they take away their passport, which is really a violation of the human rights. Correct. And this goes against Article 12 of our constitution that entitles each and every Kenyan to have a national document. So these Arabs, and I'm not hating on them, but they actually take away our people's passports. They confiscate their national IDs. They confiscate their phones, and then now they are becoming enslaved. Then we are told we have got representative embassies in Saudi Arabia, I don't know where. And even when you bring these things to your attention, like we try to bring this the issue of plight of this woman to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs here.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They have no time.
So yes, on that issue of labor, it's deplorable. You're talking 75% unemployment in this country. Where are we even recruiting, it's for me, Bitok, I wish we could do something about this country. During the Arab Spring, education to go to visit Tunisia and Egypt to participate in their constitution-making processes just after the Arab Spring. And people fondly spoke of why they rose against the regime at that time. You know? I think it's about time Kenyans actually rose against this government, if it means telling Uhuru and his cabinet, there is a plane to Jomo Kenyatta, you've got one-way ticket, and then and I'm not inciting Kenyans. I'm just referring to the Constitution of Kenya, Article 1, that says all sovereign authority and power vests in the people of Kenya. They can exercise it directly or indirectly through their elected officials. But because we are elected officials in this country are failed Kenyans, I think it's incumbent now upon Kenyans to take up their own governance, their own sovereign authority into their own hands and choose a government of their choice.
Do they have the courage?
Well, that is the question. That's why we're here, Benji, to try and remind people. That's why we're here to remind people, especially young people. You know, yesterday I had a very interesting conversation with Alex Mayore, who you had hosted in your show. He's our communications director at THIRDWAY. So I asked Alex, as a young man, you know, in this country, because I don't consider myself young anymore.
You're young.
You're young at heart.
You're young.
Even Baba is still saying, "Sisi vijana."
You know, once you cross the 35 age bracket, of course you cease to be a youth.
Yes,
but yes, of course you're still young.
Yes,
but one of the things that pains me about our country, we don't even learn from history, Benji. If you look at the names that you mentioned, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, Ken Matiba, even Kibaki himself.
Musalia Mudavadi.
These people joined government in the late 20s.
True.
Around 28. True. They served government all this time.
True.
You know, why aren't the youth in this country? And this is a question I put to Alex Mayore yesterday. As a youthful person in this country who is going through all the struggles daily of education, of food security, of, you know, all these things, going through those hardships, what is in your psyche as young people? Why can't you do something about this country? Because, you know, you have got, assuming that we all live longer, you have the advantage of a longer time in this country.
Half a century, actually, to
so
be
you
exact.
have the opportunity to fix this country for the betterment of your own self and maybe of your children to come.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
But remember, and this is why also we need to also talk about the education system. EKURU, you must understand that young people are disempowered. They are disenfranchised. An average young person in this country, what is their mindset? They are aspiring to buy their first boda or bicycle. A lot of graduates are tarmacking.
Yes.
A lot of these young people come from poverty. They have never even had a relative who was wealthy or prosperous. So their thinking is very limited. They just want a small hustle to sell KDF and get some small money and maybe start a family.
Live by the day.
So it's a survival kind of thing. You're big-minded. You are thinking, you know, about the economy in grand terms. Interest rates, national debt, borrowing from banks and doing business and how all of that can impact your life. They're not quite there yet. And I'm not justifying anything, Dr. I'm just explaining, you know, this kind of lackadaisical approach to very serious things where they don't even feel they have the voice to ask questions or to stand up. That's why many times when somebody like Bonnie stands up, then you see, because of the thinking, the rotten, small thinking, they say that guy who is paying him to do that. You see, the thinking again revolves around subsistence eating day by day. So for Bonnie to say something, it means someone is paying him to do that. And so it's a mentality thing. We need to have an education system that churns out not just robots, not just people that are selfish. You need to understand your existence in the larger context of humanity. So that in the apartment complex where I live, I noticed that in all the common areas, lights are on during the day. Because you see, this 844, nobody thinks that it's their business to switch off lights because it's not me paying for the lights, so I don't care. So,
but actually, you're paying because those are common common services.
And even by destroying the planet. And even by destroying the planet.
Even just saving them, yeah.
And so our young people now have been reduced by politicians to just being hecklers. Look at, for example, and I'm going to come to politics if Bitok allows me, and I'll ask you a question or two on politics. Okay. Look at the manufactured hashtags that we see running every morning against Ruto, for Raila. Just manufactured hashtags.
Young people
doing them, being misused.
Yes.
Chukua hii 500, enda pale, go and shout, go and throw a stone, go and run a hashtag.
Trend something against
BENJI.
Yeah,
just
something against AUKOT.
And it's usually just it's really nonsense. But the good news, though, Daktari, is that by having discussions such as these, I personally believe so much in each one teach one. So that the Alex you're at your office will aspire to be you tomorrow. That by your discussion, even now on radio, he is learning. Learning does not just happen only in the classroom. Even THIRDWAY's office is a classroom. Even a radio station like this is a classroom. So that we have a lot of young people, and I'm seeing more of this happening now, maybe because of social media, where people are a bit more enlightened. There's a bit more critical thinking. There's a bit more demand. I mean, the fact that, and I always use this example, Daktari. People say, oh, why do Jubilee guys complain and they're the ones who picked the government? There's no higher honor in democracy than to vote for a government and then to come
criticize it
and have the audacity to say, I voted for you, but I am not happy with what you're doing. I don't like how you're doing it. Therefore, I withdraw my support. The guy who is criticizing President Uhuru, who is a Jubilee voter, that guy has more right than anybody to criticize the president and to ask the president to be accountable and to hold him accountable. So again, it is not you can see how our thinking is upside down. It's not something to be mocked for. It is not something to be condemned for. It is something to be commended for, to have the guts and shed the pride to say, I picked Jubilee. I'm not happy with Jubilee. I demand more from Jubilee. That is your democratic,
and I'm not afraid to say
honorable right, and I'm not afraid to say so.
So there are two quick things, just in addition to what Benji has said. Why the young people, why there's this despair and desperation and can I say largesse or just the apathy in the country, especially among the youth. But first of all, of course, I know many young people, by the way, and don't get us wrong. And I think I want to respond to Senator Steve David Kipruto. We are not condemning all young people in a blanket way. We know there are many young people who are actually doing a fantastic job, including yourself, Senator Steve David. But there are two quick things here, we talk. In every society, there has to be what we call succession planning. Yeah? Just like even from our own traditional cultural upbringing. Inafika wakati, wazee wanaretea wanaenda chini ya miti, wanawachia vijana jukumu ya kuchunga nini? Jamii. To take care of the community. If it's protecting the community, ensuring, even to just use a very funny example of raiding other communities, and I'm saying this as a person from a pastoralist community who still have these bad manners of raiding each other. So it's normally the young people who are used to this. Why? Because wazizi wamechoka, they can never do such a thing. But that is the aspect of succession planning. Even when your father, become older, they then can bless you as a young person and say, we want you now to look after your family, look after your mother, look after your children. In Kenyan politics, we ought to derive that value in leadership from our traditional cultural upbringing. And say, even in running of this society, this country we call Kenya, which is now our family. Because we are not going anywhere. Kenya ni yetu. Wapende wasipende. Kenya ni yetu. Now we are not going anywhere. And we will try to tell them. You see, what the leadership in Kenya has done over decades, Bitok, is not to advance the development or the prosperity of Kenyans generally. Because we have had leadership that are not happy with a developed nation, a developed people, because that will give you satisfaction. Just like the same way we keep on giving this tired example of the tiger economies of Singapore, South Korea, and the rest. These leaders that time, the Lee Kuan Yews and the rest, had some pride in themselves as leaders and say, should I die? I want to leave my country, Singapore. And you remember, look at the images of Singapore when Lee Kuan Yew was hospitalized. People, multitude of humanity surrounded the hospital, praying for him. He was an old man. For sure he was going to die. But because of that love they had for their leader, after what he has done for them, people were sleeping outside the hospital for months, just praying and hoping that,
he was an amazing leader.
Yes. Yeah, he was an amazing leader.
And you guys pray.
In Kenya, we don't have that kind of leadership.
Nyinyi mtaomba ama mtanyonga?
We don't have maybe tutaomba waende. We don't have that kind of leadership that really says, let me encourage some succession planning, even in politics, encourage younger people to take over. So what the leadership in Kenya has invested over the years is to create a desperate populace.
Correct.
That you can easily manipulate.
Correct.
When somebody is desperate, you begin to lack dignity, to lose your own dignity and self-worth. So that even if you now become a beggar,
correct,
when you're a beggar and you're experiencing pangs of hunger, whoever gives even a biscuit, you will glorify that person. And that's exactly where the political leadership in this country has created the larger part of Kenyans. A desperate population, hopeless, people just shackled. It's like the story of slave and master. And I wish Dr. Ojwang was here to remind us of his metaphor, where the slave, when the master treats the slave in a very fair way, the slave is shocked.
Please oppress me.
Please oppress me. And I keep on reminding guys of Pedagogy or The Oppressed by Paulo Freire. That I think there's a passage there where the oppressed actually capture the oppressor, and they tie him.
I actually bought 50 books yesterday.
Yes.
I'm stocking a library.
Okay.
And I intend to just spend the whole December just reading.
So you should buy Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I think you can get it from the library in Yaya Center. You read there's some passage about how the oppressed actually capture the oppressor. They tie him, tie him kabisa, disempower him kabisa. But then they sit back and they start asking,
now we will be oppressing us.
No, not even that. They are wondering, will he be able to disentangle himself and then become oppressed? So we need to give Kenyans hope.
Anasema na akitoka hapa kutendaje?
Anasema nafikiri anaweza kutoka. So they start.
And human psychology is so interesting, as Dr. alludes to. Do you know when slavery was banned by Abraham Lincoln? Back in the 1800s. Having been around for some 200 years, since 16 something. Do you know, EKURU, a lot of slaves refused to come out of slavery. They had, it was banned, it was like a
declaration thing. Actually.
It was a declaration. But they didn't have, human beings can be so funny. They didn't have that courage and fortitude to march out and go to self-determination. Why? Because a lot of human beings like what is familiar. So let me give you an example of something that is happening by a daughter of yours now. In the lands ministry, there's been a lot of chaos since independence. Everybody knows that. There are dual sets of documents that are held. When you want to go and ask, then they give you the fake one or the real one and what have you. There is a lot of analog stuff that happens. There's a lot of fake titling. You know the mess that is there. So now Farida Karone has come and implemented this system to digitize all lands records in order that for you to do a transfer, you log into a system, it authenticates your password, your identity. Nowadays it's possible to digitize everything. But now, guess what? The cartels, that famous word, cartels, they don't want that. They don't know. So they fight it, they undermine it, they fund people against it. LSK is against it, but LSK has factions. And ultimately, it's like, here's a digital system that is foolproof, that you can do verification of title, validation of title. But guess what? Let us stay with what is familiar. Let us not go digital. See Switzerland. Let us do things the way we know. So now they want, when you want to do a transaction in Nairobi, you cannot just log in They want you to go to Ardhi House. You find a kamzee. He whispers, he tells you, sasa nipatie 3,000. Niende nikuangalilie. There's a guy I work with inside there. Then he says, now, enda kesho kuja na 30,000. Najua mutu. Tuanze kufanya hii process. Can you just imagine that you can have a well-designed, because as you know, Daktari, with IT now, there's nothing that you cannot design and do and deploy to the letter, with all these cameras and data and what have you, that cannot achieve what you wanted to achieve. But now someone says, no, let us not do that. Let us go back to where we were in 1989. It's unthinkable, but that's sometimes is what human beings are, resistant to change, unwilling to, dream of a better world, a better country. And it's just, slavery ended and people just still wanted to be slaves.
Yeah, we in this show, we try to encourage and to tackle people. We are now tackling the young people, and we are telling them, now that you have got the hindsight of knowledge, we are in the 21st century, for heaven's sake. We are not Sinjandropas anymore. We now have knowledge. We now know how governments ought to work for us. We now know what a failed government is in the example, for example, of Jubilee. That is knowledge. So now let's take that knowledge forward. We now know the youth of this country and women are the majority. Like we have tackled in this show many times. So what? If you are the majority, so what? You numbers. Use your numbers now and to bring that change. So we are telling guys, it's no longer enough for you to keep lamenting and complaining and sitting in the periphery.
Do something.
Do something about it. Especially now for young people, and I have a message for them. And I want to use the example of a young man from Capedo, Payton, called Stanley Lotter. What Stanley Lotter has done, he has actually gone out of his way to mobilize 30 young people. And he has told them, we must take over the county assembly of Turkana in 2022 as young people. And we can begin to question how billions of money that come to Turkana is being used in terms of service provision, if it is water. The problem of pastoralists. Ukipatia pastoralists maji, water alone, you have solved 80% of their problem.
Imagine, and water is life. Yes.
And water is life. So they want to know about why our villages do not have water, why our village, is there insecurity, why are young people not being employed, why are they educated? And these are all graduates from the university, various universities in Kenya. So I like the fact that now Sandy Lotter is coming out to say, I want to mobilize at least 30 young people to run in all the 30 wards. In Turkana. This is brilliant, and this is action, standing up for action.
Is he in a political party? Or how is he doing it?
He's in a political party. He's in Thirdway Alliance Kenya.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's
so and I'm encouraging all young people in all the 47 counties of Kenya. Look at the number of wards in your county. Let's begin. Let's begin by that change. Yeah, but also we can also mobilize. Nothing stops young people today to actually say we must have a young government. After all, examples are replete all over the world. Look at New Zealand, Canada, France, Austria, young people in government. Namibia, the other day they elected, is it a 25-year-old as a minister?
Wow, yeah.
A minister for
born
immigration.
1995.
Yes,
yeah.
A minister, young lawyer. Appointed probably the youngest minister in the world. Actually, you can Google. I can't remember her name, but the youngest at 25 years old. So you can take over government because you have knowledge. You can research.
Talking about numbers and talking about taking over government and talking about taking control. Our good friend Francis Kimemia, said that deep state, deep stick that is so deep that even if all the youth decide they're going to mobilize yours, not 30, even 30 million, you're not going to hack this thing. BENJI NDOLO, do you have a deep stick?
It's so funny. One of the first people to talk about the phenomenon of deep state, if you really go back to the record, was BENJI NDOLO. But it's not as simple as people try to imagine. I'm one of the guys that on record in Kenya began to talk about the deep state some years back. It's not this thing that people imagine it to be. It's much more complicated than Mr. Kimemia tried to portray it. Indeed, deep state is a reality. It's
a deep state.
In fact, what we always say, and the things I cannot say on here, there is what you call government.
No, you can't say anything on air.
Governments come and go.
You're also behaving like Kimemia. Kimemia was saying, there are things I cannot say. Say on air.
You see, governments come and go, and then the state is enduring. So I have a friend of mine who was saying that, we share a lot. So I have a friend of mine who has friends in high places, and he said, Uhuru came in and he had to now organize his government. And he realized that in every corner there were Kibaki guys. So, you want to assert your authority, you want to, further your agenda, so you have to kind of take care of the Kibaki guys. And after they were done taking care of the Kibaki guys, as hard as that was, he then realized, guess what? There are Moi guys. Deep inside guys that, quietly in different corners, unseen, make decisions, and not even that, people that even understand how government works. If it is how IFMIS is deployed, how it works, why it doesn't, etc.
Didn't have IFMIS.
No, I'm just giving IFMIS as an example.
Okay.
Yeah, because IFMIS came the other day, but the other day is not exactly the other day, given that Uhuru was then finance minister. And so deep state is a conglomeration of very intricate, deep-rooted forces. Deep state can also lose. In 2002, deep state, their desire, their everything. In fact, let me quote Caroline Mutoko here, a friend of mine, who, when she was radio queen at Radio Africa, she hosted 2 guests for an interview towards the election. One of the guests came with 2 cars and 1 bodyguard, the Honorable Mwai Kibaki. He just came in. He came in a bit on time, a little late like me. Talked about what he wanted to do in a very, relaxed Kibaki fashion. Tutafanya hii, and we want to fund education, and we have a vision to do this. And he finished and he left. And then another young guy came. And before he came, there was so much security. After he left, there was still so much security. There were blue Mercedeses everywhere. And that was the Honorable young Uhuru Kenyatta at that time. He was the deep state project, so to speak. And he came in, and it was just clear, this is who the powerful president wanted as a candidate. And of course, he was whitewashed. He was a greenhorn, inexperienced, very young, not knowing this and that. And if you look at Mark To's funeral, President Uhuru says how when all this was over, he was just even happy it was over, because it was too complicated for him. It was too... he was just completely... Mark To would tell him, when the president calls you, say this. Then Mark To would call him again and say, you're not supposed to tell him I talked to you before. So all this is at Mark To's funeral, and he was like, it was such a headache. Deep state is there, but there's a way it can also be overwhelmed by circumstances, by many factors. It can also be used as a ruse. It can also be used as a ruse. And in this particular instance, and I wonder what Daktari's take is, the deputy president today is running like an outsider in government. So as all these things are going wrong in Jubilee, guess what? He is getting the empathy and sympathy of Kenyans. That he is persecuted, that he is not part of it. And easily, when campaigns begin from December going forward, it will be quite easy to pin a lot of the issues. You see what happened when Raila came in, and he himself said that, I think, last week, that you see, we had an agenda, tulikuwa na kazi, we had a plan, and then ule jamaa akakuja akatuondoa kwa barabara. I think that this strategy is really working. I think it has fruits that the number 2 is going to reap. And I challenge you, Bitok, and I know you are able to do this, to go and look at any polling, including intelligence circles and what have you. You'll see that the DP is consistently and constantly running ahead, in which case he could have had a very tough time carrying the baggage of Jubilee. He is now free of that baggage being pinned on his boss, being pinned on his boss's friend Raila. And he's running as a sober guy, hardworking, persecuted, with an idea for what the country needs, as he always talks about it, stima, barabara, tunafanya ajira ya watu wadogo, etc., 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 bottom up. And you wonder if this, in and of itself, as Eric Latif was saying, isn't a strategy. In and of itself, that this is a strategy to strengthen him, to catapult him, so that in the fullness of time, he's basically unstoppable. I really wonder.
So
Doctor, even before you tell us about it, the people need answers on your shirt. They are saying it looks like deep state. There are dangers written all over it.
Pirate.
Yeah. Are you a pirate of the Turkana?
this is just a shirt.
The pirates of the Turkana.
This is just a shirt. And as you know, I'm trying also to run away from this colonial mindset that lazima uvae shirt na tie.
Lakini hiyo imewekwa danger kila kitu. Hiyo ni gani?
Sio danger tu, ni shirt tu, ni design. It's just a design.
Ndio labda hiyo ndio deep state.
Yes, no, it's not deep
Ma
state.
dipstick.
But listen, deep state exists. A deep state is the government behind the government. Yeah. Deep state in simple term actually is the interest of the current government in achieving certain political or certain manipulative measures, to advance its own cause. You see, the reason deep state Benji failed or did not fail in the context of Kibaki versus Uhuru is because Moi was going. And I think even Moi himself must have seen this coming, because by the time he concedes his last time, Katiba and all that, so he didn't have the control of the deep state. Right now, and what Kimemia said actually was very worrying for many of us, even for me, having run as a presidential candidate in 2017. It is very worrying because indeed it is true.
Ulipatana deep state?
I think deep state only tukutana na barabarani hapo wakani. Okay. Now I believe. Actually,
some of us know the details, but it's not for here.
Yes. The truth of the matter is, deep state, we're talking about, of course, the intelligence arm of government, the security, whatever. All
military intelligence.
All those, they actually manipulate outcomes. This actually reminds me of the words of Joseph Stalin. And he said that, those who cast the vote decide nothing. But those who count the vote decide everything. So, and that's deep state working.
So why are you guys telling us to mobilize and vote?
Exactly, and that's the question I asked.
Because you must,
Governor Kimemia, in our demand letter to him, and we wrote to him and we told him, no, you must account. THIRDWAY Alliance released a letter demanding, and we have given him an ultimatum. Even the next 3 days, he does not disclose. Because remember, like we say in our letter, Kimemia is not an ordinary Wanjiku. He was the head of public service in this country. Yeah.
And Raila accused him of very serious things.
Yes.
At that time.
Yes. He was the head of public service in this country. He was also, I think, sitting in the
he was the chair of NSAC.
Chairman of the security committee in this country, meaning he actually controlled deep state. And when he makes allegations such as those ones that, it depends, he actually says the exercise of your political right under Article 38 is useless to forming a government of your choice or whatever. It doesn't matter. Then he brought in international community and said Kenya is a very important country, and we all know strategically that. And this is not. Kimemia was honest, by the way. Kimemia was very honest. Foreign regimes influence governments. That they think they sit in a very strategic location. Patrice Lumumba was killed by international, wherever it is. Sankara how can I forget?
Thomas Sankara.
Burkina Faso was taken out. And many others we can say. People now even beginning to ask, was Pio Gamapinto taken out because he had the progressive ideas? Was Tom Mboya taken out? J.M. Karaoke, the story of J.M. Karaoke in 1975 and all that. Some people were very progressive in their mindset. Steve Biko in South Africa, and many of these people were taken out. It's an international days. Indeed, I think Kimemia was very honest for the first time, and maybe the only bone I have to pick with him. And we told him in our letter, based upon Article 35, the right to information. Because what you are saying as a former head of public service is that the exercise of our fundamental rights and freedom to participate in an election,
is useless.
To exercise our rights, it does not matter. In other words, he was saying, forget about what the Constitution says about your rights. Or, it doesn't matter.
Forget about the
state as an interest. If an international community has an interest, even if you cast your ballot in favor of Benji as your next president, or Bitok or EKURU AUKOT, it doesn't matter if deep state does not like either of two of you. For me, that is very important information he must tell us as Kenyan. I mean, again, out of respect and protection of our constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights and Article 35 in particular, if he's holding this information as a person, which information affects the exercise of our fundamental rights, because to go into an election is a right exercised by all Kenyans. You know, to choose a government is a fundamental right. And to say that presidents serve the interests of deep state or international community. So who do we have in State House today? Is he our president? Is he serving our interests? And maybe to some extent, actually, he's also telling us, by the way, looking into the failures of Jubilee now, even putting you guys into debt, maybe he's serving the interests of China with all these debts and all these other, whose interests is he serving?
Precisely.
Yeah, and for me, we can condemn Kimemia on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm thinking maybe we should
pick the
thank him.
confession.
Finally, this man is actually telling us the truth.
Yeah.
Because why haven't our government actually served us? Whose interests are these governments serving? For example, last year, didn't President Uhuru, during lockdown,
Give flowers to
give
the UK.
flowers to the British, send flowers.
Do you know, and this used to be true,
This is serious.
of all foreign direct investment in Kenya, 70% is British. And now there's a new entry of China in the last 20 years. But you can clearly see, if you look at Thatcher and the role of the British, etc., that many a time, a lot of what we do, a lot of how we do our policy, if you look at markets that we fly into, if you look at horticulture and what have you, their interests have to be very well considered, or else there's a consequence. And so again, the poor, quote unquote, native, his thoughts, his desires, his aspirations honestly come last. And this is why the task of nation building, to boost this country to where it needs to be, it falls on you and I, the educated, modern thinking minds. And like Daktari was saying, that is why those minds are not exactly the best friend of, regimes, because you are kind of enlightening people and opening their eyes to ask the right questions, to understand the Constitution. Do you know, Daktari, that the Constitution of Kenya 2010, research shows that only a paltry 13% of all 50 million Kenyans have read the Constitution. So that's still another challenge. People have not read the Constitution. They don't understand the Constitution. They've not internalized it. The leaders don't like it. So there's really no disconnect, because who's going to hold them to account? Basically, you give them a blank check and they do as they please. And so I said this to a tweet that Ahmed Nasir posted, that he expressed outrage. And I said, why would you be outraged at Kimemia for saying the truth? Like I said, it's not as clear cut as they try to put it, that, deep state is this or that. It's a much more convoluted, complex, calculation of many, many, many factors. And indeed, one of my favorite examples in 2017, I was able to categorically note that, unlike in the 90s when Moi was under siege from foreign governments, embassies, etc., the NASA brigade, Bitok, if you remember, didn't have a single embassy that stood with them in the dispute between NASA and Jubilee government. To me, that spoke volumes.
Yes.
They didn't have it wasn't government of Spain or Denmark or Germany, or not a single.
And yet they are quick to criticize us for not practicing democracy.
Correct.
What about 2013?
So that
the
tells
international
you,
community was against the do.
No, actually, international community, BENJI,
yes,
declared the 2017 election free and fair, until we went to court to prove no, this election was a presidential election was not free and fair.
And that's what I'm saying.
You remember our audit of THIRDWAY Alliance Kenya, which really discovered, or unearthed irregularities and illegalities in the transmission of results. Yet the international committee had given that election a clean bill of health, including IGAD, led that time by Mahama.
To me, that says a lot.
2013? Would you still say the same?
2013.
The international community told us choices have consequences.
2013 was different. And 2013 was a bit complicated and the stakes were too high. You know, the stakes were too high. Again, there were issues around the credibility of the tallying process of the vote. There were allegations of rigging and what have you. So again, these allegations dogged the government from day one, Uhuru government from day one. But they were strong, they were able to weather the storm. I think you remember that the then opposition absconded the swearing in. I think they went to South Africa to delegitimize the government, to deny the government of the sense of credibility and legitimacy. And I think that given that, in hindsight, the president then moved quickly in 2017, some years later, he was now more seasoned, two-term president, to then quickly capture Raila and, bring him to his side. So again, complex things here. One thing I've also noticed is, noted is that the Right Honorable Raila is much more careful this time as opposed to times previous past, because now he's
wooing the deep state to support him.
In a sense, You see, now he's not even declaring quickly and casually, and he's saying, I need to look at numbers, I need to listen to you, then I look at so many factors, then I will tell you if I'm running or not. Because, as they say, once bitten, thrice shy.
But Benji, we tried to prophesy here in this show.
And that's where I was going to.
I don't think Raila will run 2022.
I think he will.
Really?
He may not run. He might throw his weight behind a deep state candidate, and we will know. But listen.
Do you still believe in a chance?
Yes, there is deep state, I can tell you. Back to the Kimemia statement. Like Benji said, there's truth to what he said, but there's also the other end of it, which is we must really be worried as Kenyans, because when deep state or international community or in collusion with the international community influence, for example, who is our president, who forms our government, of course they have interest. The international community has interest in any country, wherever it is. Talk about the British people. I remember when we were doing the constitution, Benji, the British had a keen interest on the question of land. When we were trying actually to reduce...
For obvious reasons.
Yeah. The leaseholds.
The leaseholds. Yeah. The land question was an issue. That was not the ordinary British person. It is the British government. So that is a member of the international community interested. Today, conflict...
Laikipia.
I mean, who owns the ranches?
50,000 acres.
Exactly.
Why?
This is a direct connection of these people. Remember, Kenyans, we need to read. The history of colonialism. The people who came, quote unquote, to colonize us actually did not want to colonize us. They were running away from persecution in their countries. Including those people, prisoners, the hardcore criminals who were being sent to Australia. They didn't go to colonize the Australians. But the moment they got there, the moment they came to Kenya, they saw the White Islands. They saw all this beautiful weather. Then they wrote back to the Majesty and said, I think we found a very beautiful land. This land can actually serve us. We want the protection of the crown.
Correct.
I want Kenyans to go back to history.
Protectorate.
Yeah, we want to be a protectorate because we are still your nationals. But this land is so beautiful. We can do a lot.
We can't just leave it.
Can you protect us? So the settlers who came to Kenya actually did not colonize Kenya. It was Britain, the government, that actually colonized Kenya. Because the settlers did not come with the army.
True.
They came much later when they discovered, there is beautiful.
So the question, can I ask Daktari, because he's more of a scholar than I am, because now we have gone into a realm that really fascinates me. So this happened, Daktari, in the 1800s. Okay, I know you're a scholar. You're well read, and I'm a social activist. I do these debates on a daily basis in different spaces. Tell me, Daktari, when the British citizens, the whites, when they discovered this in the 1800s, and they wrote back to their different... In fact, if you look at also the war, the civil war in America with George Washington, etc., and when they revolted against the British then and established another country in America, I just wonder, and I want you to help explain this to me. How come how come they were able to be so far ahead in thinking as opposed to those they found?
Yeah.
Because there's always the discussion, they found us in monkey skins and what have you. Then they said, okay, here's the Bible, etc., etc. And, you know, they encountered very little resistance. Why?
So there is a man called Huntington. I think he has written about civilizations. And all civilizations develop over years and over centuries. Okay? And one of the question mark they put is whether Africa had a civilization. Of course, it is biased, it was racial.
And as you answer me, Daktari, please remember that as we have this discussion today in 2021, we are having this exchange in their language. Yes. Because you and I are not British.
That's very true.
But we are not from England. Our ancestors, you know, third, fourth generation were not. But here we are speaking English.
Yes.
So continue.
That's right. So it's the whole aspect of civilization. Actually, it's called The Clash of Civilization. I think it's another book you may want to buy.
Let me write that down.
The Clash of Civilization by Huntington. And of course, he talks about how other civilizations started, the Mesopotamia one, you know, Egypt and a little bit, but he puts a question mark on the African civilization. Now, of course, I'll respond it very briefly this way, Benji.
Yes.
As societies grow, they identify what makes their society prosperous, comfortable, which is why they invented, they went and say, how do we make our lives easy? We need to invest the road. We need to invest electricity, the plane, the highways, the undergrounds, and all that. You go to Thailand, for example, Bangkok, they have invented what's called the sky train, you know, because they're making their life. So
where are Africans in all this?
Yes. So Africans in all this because, again, another book you must read is called The Africans, by a man called David Lamb.
I've read that one.
Yes, you've read that one. Yeah. And you know what he says in the opening paragraph there? That we Africans deluded ourselves by thinking that we had actually chased away the colonialists, only to replace them with black entrepreneurs. Exactly. And that's where the problem is. That the leadership that we inherited, bequeathed, you know, did not actually find a common value in our society to say, this is how I want to make Kenya a prosperous country,
correct,
Tanzania and the rest. You know, and this is why I think, I'm sorry again to say that, the Western world, developed world, really looks down upon us, even as we speak eloquently in their language. Right. They still think there's something primitive about us Africans. Because how come we are not able to see, even now with the hindsight, and this is the example of talk I like giving. And you said earlier on that you want to travel from England. You're a minister for transport and communication in an African country, let's say Kenya. Obviously, that minister probably lives somewhere in Runda, Muthaiga, or Lavington. Or
and drives a German car.
And drives a German car and all that. So, before we get the expressway, Nairobi Expressway, that means that there'll be less traffic going to JKIA. Let's go back to the old road. And that's what we're talking about, 50 plus years of development.
Yes.
You're a minister for transport. You have a meeting in London, central London. You leave your Runda home or your office, you struggle maybe 2 hours to fly to the airport. So you fly overnight, you know, you get into London in the morning. Outside London Heathrow, you actually go to the underground. You take a train and expressway, 1.5 or 2 hours maximum, you're in central London. And you actually have your meeting, you're done, you have your lunch, then you come back again. 1 hour, maximum 1 hour, 25 minutes, so you are in central London. You board your plane back to Kenya. You're traveling business class. Yeah. You land into JKIA in the morning. Just from outside JKIA, traffic, 3 or even 4 hours to your Runda home. Yeah. And it doesn't prick your conscience
that something
as
is
a
wrong.
person that has enjoyed a smooth transport service from London to central London back, that why don't we even do an underground or a sky train? That is the, and like we say in Benji, tukubali tu, tuko na ujinga fulani katika hii country. We are very mediocre people in charge of, they don't think beyond, you know, and that's why I want to respond also to the question by Jude Muyoma, Ted. And I just want to assure Ted that I'm not giving up anytime soon. I'd given myself 10 to 15 years to do politics, to try and bring sanity into our political discourse. And which is why for us, even as a party, as THIRDWAY Alliance Kenya, we never stopped after the 2017 general election. We brought Punguza Mizigo on board. The idea was to try how do we implement our constitution better? How do we make the lives of Kenyans better? We'll continue this. The small absence you've seen of me is because I was doing this consultancy, helping South Sudanese come up with a roadmap on their constitution. So I'm still very much intact in this. But there's something I want to say so that we can contextualize the issue of the deep state and the international community. We agree the international community has always had an vested interest in our countries, both in terms of, for example, resources that we have. Remember, some of these countries were actually developed from raw materials taken from our country.
Of course.
Today, Canada, is it Canada or Australia? That Tiomin mining company in Kuala is Canadian.
Yes.
Canada definitely has an interest in our country because they are actually stealing raw wealth from Kwale County, and they even have a special bath by the port of Mombasa.
But where are we when they're stealing?
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. That's why they would be interested to know who is in charge of our government. And we are giving this information so that now Kenyans can actually awaken themselves and see how their wealth, how their resources is being used, because we have got a sleeping, lazy government, political class, useless opposition that have now joined government, and they have abandoned all democratic values and pursuits just to go into eating. The interests are there. Why is KDF? We need to ask ourselves a question. Why is our Kenya Defense Forces in Somalia up to this very date?
Yeah, I protested that.
Over plus 10 over years ago.
Yeah.
Why? Because when America was chased and he saw its nationals being killed,
Butchered.
and dragged and butchered on the streets of
Mogadishu.
They said, no, let's find a dog to send to Somalia to protect our interests so that we stop Al-Shabaab and the rest of these guys from coming to attack us, from killing our people. American leadership was so pained to see its soldiers, its servicemen, being dragged on the streets, or being tied.
So they say drag someone else.
Let's send somebody else. So we find fools in Kenya, East African countries, and they say, let them go and fight Al-Shabaab so that we can protect ourselves. That's an interest. British have the same. China has an interest who forms our next government because it wants to sustain its loaning to Kenyans. SGR, and all others. We borrowed 350 billion for the SGR. A lot of that money went into compensating people for land. The MGR, what we had, the meter gauge railway, the old one,
could have been improved.
Could have just been expanded to become SGR at a very minimal cost of about 60 billion Kenya shillings. We did that calculation with some economists. So China has an interest in who forms our government. This national debt, Turkana oil today. People have asked me what happened to our Turkana oil. Ni mafuta ya kujipaka ama ni mafuta ya kuweka kwa magari. Turkana oil, you saw it being transported in crude sense. If we had a responsive leadership in Kenya, I will open the first local refinery in Turkana. After all, science has demonstrated the entire Turkana land is actually sitting on a lake which could supply water for about 70 years.
An aquifer.
Okay? So purifying that oil and selling it to Ethiopia, even South Sudan. I was just come back from South Sudan. There's actually a fuel crisis. People are lining up.
And supposedly a coup as well.
Yeah. We could export.
Of course.
And we could then bring down the cost of fuel in this country and make people's lives better. Ethiopia that doesn't even have oil, price of oil there is, I think, 70 or 90 per liter.
And in Kenya,
which has a port. Exactly. What is the justification? Yet we are saying, when can Kenya say we are also an oil producing country? You need to develop, say, the oil in Turkana, have a local refinery there, and that way you find many Kenyans can find an opportunity and say, I think there is opportunities in Turkana. Tourism will grow. Did you know that, for example, Lake Turkana is the longest desert lake in the world?
Imagine.
It's 270 kilometers long, about 50 kilometers wide, and we've never even exploited it.
Imagine.
So foreign governments will definitely have an interest on a lackluster, feckless government in Africa and in Kenya, because their foreign companies are siphoning our money.
To their own benefit.
I asked myself, Benji, this question many times. If you look at who is constructing our roads, it's said that these are some of the prisoners in their country, but their countries find them opportunity to rehabilitate them and put money into them. Do you know most of these people do not even have bank accounts here in Kenya?
So they repatriate all the
they use our country to borrow money from their countries,
And
and then the
repatriate.
money goes back.
Terrible.
So we are being used.
Terrible.
You know, so 30 years of University of Nairobi was founded when 1970, is it 75 thereabout? In 1975. And one of the vibrant departments in the University of Nairobi was the Department of Engineering. Okay, for many times it was actually the only one.
Where Raila taught, in
Yes.
quotes.
Well, I don't think he taught anyway. Lower Kabet and all that. I mean, we are yet to see a certificate of some.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's beside the point. Give it even 40 years, Benji.
Yes.
How many engineers? I've been a chairman of council at JKUAT
Yes.
for 3 years.
Yes.
And every year I used to attend 2 graduation ceremonies.
Yes.
And we used to graduate at almost 10,000 engineers every year.
Right.
Why are foreigners supervising the construction of our roads? Where are our engineers? We have invested so much in education in this country. Do you think this
Hata
will
kuendesha tractor
do you,
SGR
do you think this
Chinese.
will happen in Kenya? Do you think in China, in America,
No.
wherever? They will first give their people, and we have to be
They would
selfish.
behead you.
We have to be selfish now, Bitok. We have to say no. We have trained, we have spent billions of money building universities, training, for knowledge. Let these people take charge. For you to do that, Bitok, you need a government of the people, by the people,
Credible.
and for the people.
Sawa.
You need a
Finally.
Bitok leadership.
Bitok,
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't share a book with Daktari. He's given me many books I can read. The Looting Machine.
I have it.
You have it? Huh?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Yeah, you're a reader.
I
Warlords,
don't have it.
Oligarchs,
Yes.
Corporations,
Looting Machine,
Smugglers,
Very interesting book to read.
and the Theft of Africa's Wealth by Tom Burgess. Yeah, and then I encourage people to actually buy a book. Don't do the PDF. Someone just sent me this to take a look. But buy
I'll
the
go and look
book,
for it.
flip it, put some saliva on your finger, turn the page.
Lamba,
Especially men. Wanaume wapendi kusoma. I very
Looting
much
Machine is a
encourage
fantastic book.
yeah,
It'll
people to
open your
read.
eyes.
Open your eyes, understand dynamics.
Post
It'll
the
give
title
you
to the
The Looting Machine.
The Looting Machine by Tom Burgess. Yeah, it's a good book. Read it, understand stuff.
Really put it in the camera.
Reading also
Tom Burgess.
camera is that? Yeah. Reading also enhances your diction, how you think, how you speak, your vocabulary. It just troubles me so much that a lot of men just think of kamnywes, have a drink, nyama, nini, tortoise, yo mambo yote. But kitabu, invest also in a book. Not only as young men, just mtoto, warembo, nini. No. Read as well. We really encourage
So
that.
many. Finally, 2 years down the line, why do we still have curfew? So yesterday, I had a late night meeting on Langata Road. And so when I was leaving, I encountered the longest traffic I've ever seen. Why? The cops are mounted the roadblock at Sunshine. 2 good years down the line, post-COVID, we're still having curfews. Roadblocks on the road. Which law is it being used? And EKURU, sometimes I don't understand what goes on in this country. Is there a law that can actually convict us? I just tapped on the side and I drove over. I went. I told these guys, but I cannot sit here. I drove on the way. I climbed the pavement a bit.
I avoid being out during curfew, but you're a media guy. You should have a,
Sometimes it's unavoidable.
yeah, you're right. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And I'm not ever speaking on behalf of government, but I have to also tell you the truth. COVID, I have never attended this many funerals in my life. The last few months for our family and different neighborhoods, especially Mashinani, it's a complete and total disaster. For many reasons. Number one, a lot of people didn't believe COVID was there. So especially the Delta variant. I suffered COVID myself last year. It's the terrible thing to suffer. A lot of people have recovered. Many have died. The truth is that if you look at Kenya's social life, the reality of the transmissibility of coronavirus, the way that people like to just go out and behave. I mean, we still have Kenyans shaking hands, look at the political rallies and what have you.
Yep.
If you didn't have curfew, you would actually have people just drinking all over the place, hugging, as if potentially you could actually have an explosion of the virus. This is my own assessment. I'm not trying to justify oppression in any way. You really would have Kenyans just behaving like there's no virus. Therefore, that would stretch the resources are already stretched to the limit.
Is the virus a night runner?
We don't have healthcare in this country per se. ICUs zilija zamani. Not only kuja, look at the cost of, you know, today if you have corona and you are not wealthy, you know, I have family members who are in Nairobi hospital as recently as 2 weeks ago, living there with bills of 1.1 million shillings. Where are you going to get money like that? And so it would be an explosion of madness, of people just running around, clubbing, drinking all over the place, then transmitting, you know, the virus all over the different neighborhoods. We have slums, you know, where, you know, in actual fact, a human being should not be living in a slum where there's no running water, there's no toilet, there's no, you know, proximity to your neighbor. You are separated by a paper bag. But we don't talk about this because it's not cool to talk about it. We don't talk about this because if you talk about it, you're attacking Raila. You know, you're attacking. You know, you're being disrespectful to the president. Whatever, what have you? And so, curfew continues, and
politicians are doing rallies. Or which human beings are they, robots?
It's true, and that is part of what is. That is also what is. You see, let me put it this way before Dr. comes in. You know, you don't solve a problem by pointing to another wrong. In other words, one of my favorite analogies, you don't say, you know, mimi napiga bibi yangu because unajua pia daktari anapiga bibi. So when you are asked, Bitok, why are you so abusive to your children? They say, you know, also my producer, I'm not the only one. Even my producer hata yeye anapiga mtoto. You know, there's so much abuse and toxic stuff in the society. So because politicians are having rallies doesn't mean, okay, for me I'm a bar owner, so let me just open my bar because I saw Ruto having a rally as well.
So if I'm late for a meeting, what should I do? Should I sleep?
So no. That's what I'm saying. There are mitigating circumstances, and again, when a country is so messed up, it's also not for the police to use this as an opportunity to extort you. They are also there to facilitate your safe passage, to protect your existence, because by the way, you're a taxpayer. But now they also think that, well, it's an oppressive country. I have the uniform, which is power. You don't have a mask. Leta elfu moja. That's also the wrong thing. And that's why I'm saying you do not solve a problem
by using another.
Using another. So you say, huyu amevunja curfew. So even me, let me wrong him by beating him to death, as you saw in Kenjakoma. And that's just one example of many. Or by robbing a citizen.
Sawa daktari. Tukifunga, I want to know if those guys yesterday, you know, somehow maybe dragged me and took me to the police station, would have a case to answer.
Yeah, you'll definitely have a case to answer because government governs not just by law only, but they can take policy measures and administrative measures. And therefore they can charge you for flouting either rules or guidelines. Because the reason I'm saying this, this pandemic is real.
Yeah, it's real. It's so down.
I know friends who have actually died because of this pandemic. I've attended a funeral, one or two. And also science is real. Science has changed our lives in many ways. And so if you follow science, what the scientists are telling us about this pandemic, we ought to. I think we are just lucky as a continent, as Africans. That maybe the way we grew up, some of us, we grew up drinking water from the dams, playing in matope at some considerable extent. In the villages, our immunities, we still carry some germs, so that even when these germs get into our body, they are not necessarily shocked. They can be fought back. So there's an extent to which we have had immunity, because the immunization we've had as children and all that was in realization that things like polio are real, malaria and all that. But there are two questions here to raise from a legal point of view. Well, first of all, from a public policy perspective, from a health perspective, I think we need to see our government do more during this pandemic, like other governments are doing. We need to see, for example, mass testing, mass vaccination. Other governments today, they are discussing about how to revive the economies, the businesses that,
and how to pay rent for people.
How to pay rent for people, how to make sure that there's food. This is what other progressive governments are doing. Ours is not doing that. We need to make sure that these vaccines, before, until about maybe 2 months ago or a month ago, we only had one vaccine restricted to Kenya, the AstraZeneca. Yet WHO had approved, and even our own government had approved about 7 others, including the Sinopharm, the Johnson & Johnson, the Moderna, and even the Russian one, the Sputnik one, and all those. But they were not available because why? People in government had an interest in supplying these vaccines. So for them, they didn't think about Kenyans. So to be seen to be doing something, then increase this curfew. Like, to be honest with you today, if government were actually to be vigilant, take the right policy measures, health measures, we could reduce this curfew hours. Because the truth for the matter is this: people are also struggling in terms of really putting food on the table. And therefore, they really have to work. Because at the end of the day, yes, we are trying to prevent people not from dying. But at the same time, also
they can die of hunger.
They can't also die of hunger because they have to go and make a living because our government is not doing anything. A small country like Rwanda, imagine, I saw Kagame go out of his way. He was going door to door supplying people with food. We have not seen here. I want to thank a few of the individuals. Some of my friends, we worked with some of them. We managed to put together some food packages. We sent some IDP camps here in Kibera and others. So these are efforts of the individual, and there are many people who did that. But I wish we could see our government do that. When our government does that, it's even possible for people to say, I think let's respect this. From a legal point of view, the action of the police against ordinary Kenyans is discriminatory in law and even in the constitution. And why? Because we have a careless government. Government is not living by example. The leadership in this country are not living by example. When you see those political rallies by Ruto, by Raila, this is not the kind of leadership we are looking for in this country. Because you are doing this in a pandemic, knowing too well that you, William Ruto or Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta,
are vaccinated.
You are vaccinated fully. You have at least maybe an inpatient cover of about 10 to 15 million. You have 10 million. That's what they get from government. Today, you can charter a private jet, run to Dubai or wherever, and be treated. True. But the same government, same people in leadership are saying NHIF is not applicable. If you have a medical cover today, it's not applicable in private hospital. They have said no. And yet this is a pandemic. A pandemic is a special
circumstance.
It's a special circumstance. Why would the government of the day not decry the actions of medical insurance companies when they refuse to treat you? If I cannot use my medical cover during this COVID, of what use is my cover? Are you waiting for me to be knocked by a car or to be shot at? This is really stupid. Exactly. So we have a problem. So for me, I will see it from a legal point of view.
Yes.
It's very discriminatory. I think the first thing that the police should do, Inspector General of Police should do, is to say, ban all political rallies. After all, it's not even electioneering time yet. And we cannot be this careless, and spreading because, and again, let's also be very honest. Pia sisi wakija tuna ujinga. Ukienda kwa hizo political rallies, labda hata hujapata unga kwa watu wako. What are you going to do?
Wameenda kutafuta unga sasa.
What are you going to do in those political rallies?
Wameenda kutafuta unga, hiyo ndio shida.
Unga gani? Ushaona watu wakienda pigeni foleni hapo wanagawiwa sijui pesa ya kwenda kununua unga. Chwane. So why do you as Kenyans know very well that this pandemic is real? People are dying. Your own government cannot allow you to use your NHIF, your medical cover if you are lucky to have one. You are going to political rallies and risk your life because of these politicians whose interest is just about 2022 and not care about.
I actually have the answer, but it's a very complex one. We'll probably talk about it later. But one day Omtata explained to me that when power is so rare in a society, power is so rare, it is so hard to come by. Leaders therefore become overnight celebrities because it's the first time you're seeing a man in a chopper. Just imagine all the many crowds that go to look at the president or the deputy or Raila or whatever. Many just go to look at the cars. These are just...
They're mesmerized.
Well, you're just mesmerized. You've never seen a man protected by so many armed men, etc. As we wrap up, one time I was just going about my business on a weekday in a place called Cop Parkway in Atlanta. And then I noticed things were a bit different that particular day. And out there, I remember my parent visiting and asking, where are the people? Because this is a country of 300 million people, but you never see people, you never see crowding, people walking around. Everyone's pretty much driving and doing their thing. And And so I realized, so I stopped and asked, hey, what's going on? Because there's a bit of police activity, a bit of confusion in the traffic. And then someone said, oh, it's President Bush who is around. Oh, and I said, oh, it's President Bush. And then, I just rolled my window up and went about my business. I'm told in countries like Sweden, people don't even know which president is in power.
Switzerland.
And Switzerland. And for me, because I was busy that day.
It's a yearly rotation.
Bush being I didn't even know Bush was in my city. It really has nothing to do with me whatsoever. I am busy in my office. I'm busy with my things. And I'm a representation, even as an immigrant, of the average person. But look at what happens in this country, in third world countries. You hear the president is coming next week. For that whole week, watu hawajalala. People are just waiting, celebrating, and they're not ready for anything. You just look at him passing, maybe to shake his hand, maybe to listen to a lie that tutafanya hii, tutafanya ile, which they never do. So it is a phenomenon of just an impoverished, unempowered, and encumbered society.
Haya, your tackle of the day, Daktari, as we go home.
I just want to say to Kenyans that yes, we are discussing all these problems, but let's also be part of the solution to our country's problems. And I want to just end by responding to Benji briefly. Yes, it's one thing to exercise your democratic rights, and you should exercise your democratic right in the choice of your president or the government you like. But please, do also interrogate, what do these people bring on the table? Don't just exercise that right like that. I mean, if you're not going to interrogate the benefit you derive from an elected official or from a government, then there's no point of you even voting. You only vote, you must vote a government of the day that will represent your problems, that will bring sanity to the country, that will unite us. Like today, yes, we've seen this country now being almost torn apart because there's contestation towards 2022, and people are mobilizing their tribes and their regions. I heard my friend Moses Kuria say now that in 2022, deputy president position is not negotiable. It must go to Mount Kenya. That 40% of government must be theirs. I think this is a very dangerous trend, in my view, because today I can also decide I'm going to be a warlord in Turkana. Na hii mafuta yetu,
tulinda mafuta.
Tutalinda mafuta, tutalinda all the job opportunities in Turkana, or no any other tribe should come and take over those.
Natusema Turkana si Kenya.
Turkana si Kenya. That's a dangerous trend. I want Kenya to be a country where each and every tribe can live wherever they choose to. That the government of the day must serve all Kenyans in equal measure and create opportunity for all the 50 million Kenyans. So I think for me, as we're going towards 2022 election, please let's interrogate ideas and let's participate in the change that we want. Actually, the question should be, what kind of Kenya do we want? I mean, for some of us now, with intermarriage, our children not even struggling sometimes to speak, they don't even speak Turkana or Kikuyu or even Kiswahili because of the schools they go to. This is not right. It's not right. I mean, I think, we need to be Kenyans, not tribes. Well, I'm very proud to be Turkana, by the way, very proud, and I'm sure Ndolo is proud to be Kamba and your Kalenjin. But that diversity,
negative pride is
that diversity is what we should celebrate, because I don't see Kenya being Kenya without the Kambas, without the Kalenjin, without the Luos, without everybody. The Turkana, that should be our celebration of diversity. There is every good thing we can actually derive
from our own diversity.
From the various tribes in Kenya.
All right. It's been a pleasure having you, gentlemen. I want to read something here on PAYE. It's online. I hope it has not disappeared. The on PAYE, which is very interesting, from more government runs. Bunga la mwenye leo nimeona watu wamewika, masandi imezidi. He didn't want to disrupt the wisdom that was coming from the gentleman, but bunga la mwenye bado taifungua siku nyingine. I wanted to read something, but it has disappeared on PAYE. Anyway, all right, it's been a pleasure having you guys. It has been the Sheria Wiki or the 24th of September 2021. Tarehe imekuwa 24 mwezi wa 9 mwaka 2021. Tumekuwa na Daktari EKURU na BENJI NDOLO, na tumekuwa na mazungumzo. Hope to have you guys again on the panel very soon as we continue to dissect this conversation that we are building, and hope the conversation continues as
I hope to come back. Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana.
Tutaongea mambo mengine mingi.
Karibu. I hope also next time you'll not get lost on the road.
No, definitely I won't. I'll also come, we do a one-on-one, tuongea mambo mingi sana.
Yeah. So we have find you for the weekend. Asa huyu ndio atatengeneza weekend.
It was actually Alex Mayore who was reminding people, when we discuss this katiba, it's okay. We will come here and help analyze and understand. But please, most people today have smartphones. Because by the time you're watching this show Facebook Live, you definitely have a smartphone. So I think I think what you need to do, there's an application on the Constitution of Kenya which you can actually download. You don't have to read all of it. Just make it a business to read even one chapter every day.
I've read the Constitution. I love it. Exactly. It's a very good Constitution. The guy is right. Kenyans must start reading just read to understand. See at utakuwa mjuaji.
And maybe we talk going forward. Maybe we need to suggest, why don't we create some time we start chambuaing chapter by chapter of the Kenya Constitution.
A chapter a day.
Yes.
Haya, nilienda mpaka nikaenda judiciary, nikapewa katiba mpya, nikaleta hapa, sijui kuliendaje. Kwanza ilikuwa initiative yako. Nasema tagonga chapter by chapter. So maybe we'll go back again.
Niko na copy yangu always.
So I think I found what I wanted to read. I'll just read very quickly. And it's about the pay. There's a guy called Elijah Kesamuri did a post on this. And he says the tax burden on the 16% of Kenyans who work on the formal sector is on another level. While we have about 17.4 million Kenyans in employment, only about 2.8 million or 16% in the formal employment, according to NBS 2021, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. The 16% bear the biggest tax burden, especially due to payee, which is deducted at the source. Let's demonstrate the case with a Kenyan called Elijah working in the formal sector and earns 100,000 Kenya shillings per month. The average earning in the formal sector is 66,000 per month. So Elijah is privileged to have a higher income. With 100,000 that Elijah earns, 22,000 is payee. One. The balance is now 78,000. He has to balance this. Elijah has a Toyota Axio he bought on loan to cover the month. One tank is sufficient and cost about 7,500 shillings. And it's 55 liters times 135. But about 3,300 Kenya shillings is tax. Taxed again at the fuel, at the point of the pump. He can decide to use the matatus, but no difference since he pays about 150 in the rush hour, which coincides with his working time. 300 times 25 days, 7,500 Kenyan shillings. There's no escape. The Toyota Axio that Elijah drives was imported from Japan at about 1.2 million, and of this, about 444,000 is tax. Duty. Yes, and assuming a repayment of 5 years, then 7,500 Kenyan shillings goes to tax every month. Okay. Elijah stays somewhere in Kawa West in a 2-bedroom house, which goes for 15,000 shillings per month, and 10% of this tax, 1,500 shillings. Rent tax. Every month, Elijah does shopping, worth 15,000 shillings, including buying the cooking gas and food. But of this amount, about 2,500 shillings is VAT. Tax number 5. Elijah also buys 100 electricity units to run the month at the cost of 2,500 Kenya shillings. But again, 1,000 is tax. Tax number 6. Every month, Elijah is spending about 10,000 on other necessities, including clothing for his family, airtime, pay, TV, errands, etc. And again, about 2,000 is tax, mainly VAT.
Tax number 7.
Number 7. At the end of the month, Elijah has spent about 70,000 from the 78,000 Kenya shillings after pay. This means that he has only about 8,000 left in the pocket. But wait. Cumulatively, Elijah has also paid tax approximated as 40,000 Kenya shillings, which is about 40% of his income. Okay, back to the balance of 8,000. Elijah will be required to pay school fees for his 2 children, and since in the wood there is no public primary school, he has no option than to pay for them in a private school. But if a public primary school was available, the quality of education is compromised. A class has an average of 60 pupils, and one teacher is attending to these 60 pupils. So, to give the kids a decent education, he has to take them to private academy. But remember, he paid his tax to get better services from the government. Exactly. Unfortunately, he can't get a public school in the hood, and most frustrating is that the children and grandchildren to the CS Education Deputy President, CSS etc. are in private schools. Elijah will need to buy school books, and with CBC, he's even spending more on other random requests from the school. Elijah will also be required to cover for medical expenses, and although he has a medical scheme from his place of work, it requires him to pay 20% as a co-payment. Again, in his hood, there is no public health facility, and hence will still be required to go to private health sector. And if any public health facility is available, the services are suboptimal. But his 40% of income is meant to improve these services to better services. While our young man is now operating a negative account, he also has some additional responsibilities of supporting his aging parents back in the village, since agriculture is not giving any returns that they cannot rely on. Time to rethink the tax models. The base has to be spread, and service delivery by GOK has to improve in tandem with the tax paid.
It explains why Kenyans are broke. Na hata hapo hujaweka Slay Queen. While drinks.
Bado hujaenda kukamunyesho.
It's-
So it means
That's
this
why a lot
guy,
of people
there's not even
just-
time for leisure.
They look at just leaving the country. I see a lot of these discussions online now, people saying, if you get a chance to go to Australia, to America, to UK, take it and run. It's unfortunate because this is our country and we must build it, and that's my tackle. That each one must do something.
And that's why we said, when we started this show, we said that Kenya is oppressive to its own citizens.
It's abusive.
Yeah, it's very abusive because it's like public institutions have collapsed. So now what are you left with? You're just a slave. Like the story of that man I was telling you who brought me here in the morning in a bolt. What will he do with 750 with all those monumental obligations? He's just a slave. So sometimes ati afadhali tu kuamka uchase deni kuliko kuamka kuchase nothing.
Kabisa. Haya. Tafakari hayo. Hiyo ndio maisha ya Mkenya wa kawaida until Monday. Terrible. Spend the weekend thinking about it. Think about how much you give the government and what you get back from it. And then that will inform what you do in 2022. Until then, you choose to suffer or you choose salvation. And I, the bishop, sign off. I'll stop praying for you if you don't repent. Bye-bye.
Keep doing what you do.
See, enjoy your weekend.